So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for coming along today to this webinar on the cost of living crisis, but in particular, can Hammersmith and Fulham Council help with your energy bills? So on the next slide, you'll see just a wee bit of background. We will be recording the session today and we will follow up afterwards and make sure that you have access to the slides and the recording. We have got a lot of people on the call today, so I'm going to make sure that everyone is on mute throughout, but we would absolutely love this to be an interactive session and we hope to have 10 to 15 minutes at the end to go through Q&A. So please do use the chat to ask your questions throughout and we'll go through those at the end. We'll do our best to answer those. If we don't have the right colleagues on the call, then we will make a note of those questions and we'll follow up with those afterwards as well. So again, we're going to cover lots of information today, but you will receive a copy of the slides, the recording, the information, and we will also share a link to a new webpage that we have on the council website about cost of living, which we will be continually updated. So on the next slide, I'm delighted to welcome Councillor Wesley Harcourt here today, who is going to say a few welcoming and opening words.
Thanks very much, Emily. And in fact, many thanks to everybody for coming along today. It's really fantastic to see so many people. I think it just goes to show how important this topic is. Anyway, you know, we've got the elections behind us now, and so we're in a position where we can now start focusing on all the challenges that we're going to be facing. And in particular, the biggest challenge perhaps of all is that massive fall in living standards that we've had. It's the biggest one on record, and the spiralling cost of living. I think it's worth mentioning that the opening page of our manifesto clearly stated helping residents through the cost of living crisis will be the urgent priority for an incoming administration. And this is very, very timely, in fact, today, this session. Those of you who are watching the news this morning will probably have noticed and heard that the cost of living crisis, with energy prices being predicted to rise to almost £3,000 a year. That was the main item on this morning's news. And so really, you know, today's session is going to focus on that rise in energy bills, which are now increasing at the fastest rate in over 40 years. Absolutely unbelievable. You know, this is a real challenge for us. And I think you're going to hear today that a lot of this is due to external factors. The Bank of England acknowledged that roughly 2/3 of the current rise in inflation is driven by external energy prices. And that makes things extremely challenging, an extremely challenging set of conditions to work in. And really, as a council, there's only so much we can do. But that said, we've nonetheless determined to do everything we can to support each other, to support you, and support our communities. There's no way that anybody should be forced to have to choose between heating their homes or feeding their families. So today, officers are going to be sharing some practical steps, the practical steps you can take. That includes, as Emily was saying, grants and various schemes, or talking about organisations like Green Doctors that can offer personalised support. Today, in fact, is just the first of many sessions that we're going to be running over the next few weeks, months on the cost of living crisis. So please, please, please do ask questions, do get involved and help us make this as useful for you as possible. That's enough from me. I'm going to hand back to Emily. Okay, thanks a lot.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Councillor Harcourt. And I'd like to extend another welcome as well to all of the other councillors that we have on the call today. So a bit of an agenda, we'll be handing over to our colleagues, Tim, Jess and Kirsty, who will give a bit of a background on the energy crisis. Why are we here? What are some of those external factors? And what are some of those impacts? But really the focus of today and where we'll spend most of our time is talking about the real practical support schemes and grants that are available. So Kirsty, who's head of benefits, will talk through what's available from the council, and we are delighted to welcome Nure from Green Doctors, who will talk about the fantastic Green Doctors service that is available locally. And again, we will leave 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A at the end and finish at about 1 o'clock. So on the next slide, I will now hand over to Tim, who'll take us through a bit of background.
Thank you, Emily. Can you hear me all right? Great, thank you. So I will just very, very briefly, before we talk through the support that is available, just expand a little on what Councillor Harcourt said about the external factors that are causing this crisis. And they really are they're not just largely beyond the control of us in Hammersmith and Fulham, they're largely beyond the control of the UK government as well. And this is, this really is a very serious rise in energy prices. It's easily the worst since the 1970s and possibly longer than that. And the major reason for the increase in the very big increases in the cost of living that we're feeling in everything is the cost of energy, because the cost of energy feeds into pretty much everything we buy. If you go and you buy a mobile phone or a loaf of bread, energy, whatever it is, energy will have had to have gone into manufacturing that. So it's not just your energy bills, although that's the biggest thing that I think we're going to experience. It's the cost of everything we buy as well. Next slide, please. So I think that there's a lot that's going on that's causing this, and I don't have time to cover it in great detail. But the major factors really are the ones on this slide. So firstly, we've got this kind of very complicated effects of COVID-19 and the rebound, or at least partial rebound in global demand for goods and services and energy that's happening as that starts to recede, at least to some extent. We also have them coming on top of that, with very bad timing, the war in Ukraine. And the UK and indeed Europe, we import quite significant quantities of the energy we use and natural gas we use, and we import quite a lot of that from Russia. And the talk of sanctions on the import of Russian gas are one of the big factors that's driving up the cost of future gas and the likely increases in the cost of gas, the natural gas we use to heat our homes next winter. And while most of this is driven by the cost of gas, we actually in the UK get still at least half of our electricity by burning natural gas as well. So whilst the cost of gas that you put in your boiler is going up by the most, the cost of electricity is being dragged up as well, because we get a lot of our electricity by burning natural gas. And that picture there is of a gas-fired power station. Our power stations increasingly are not the kind of big curved concrete cooling towers that we used to see from coal-fired power stations. A lot of them over the past 20, 30 years have switched to, well, both renewables and to natural gas, looking like the picture on the right there. Next slide, please, Emily. Jess, sorry. And then there are some lesser factors that have also happened at the same time as these two big factors of the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine. One quite important one is the very low gas storage capacity we now have in the UK. We had quite a low gas storage capacity anyway. We shut down one of our big storage facilities a few years ago, and we now have very little ability to store gas against future price rises or against future reductions in the amount we can import. We don't get a huge amount of our electricity from nuclear, the second point down there, but we do get about a tenth of it. And our nuclear power stations are now quite old and are increasingly needing to be shut down for maintenance. And then over and above all of that, last year there was a very significant fire in the main power cable that we use to import electricity from France. And we're a net importer of electricity from Europe, from the continent. And that has significantly reduced the capacity of that cable, and is unlikely to be back at its full capacity until 2023. And that's another thing that's driving this. And then that last point I think is important as well. This energy price crisis would have been worse if we had not invested in renewables like wind generation and solar generation over the past 10, 20 years. And we have done that to a significant extent, but it would have been even better, even less of a problem if we'd invested more in renewables. And particularly the cheapest form of renewable electricity in the UK is onshore wind. And I don't think we've been investing enough in that. So that's just been too slow. And also we really should have been, and we need to in the future, invest more in energy efficiency as well. And we'll be saying a bit more about that in the call. One of the best ways of reducing the cost of energy is to waste less of it. And we can waste less of it, particularly by insulating our houses and our buildings better. That's not by any means a comprehensive overview of why this is so serious, and the cost of energy has risen so much and will rise so much more. But that's the main factors that's going on. So I'll now hand over to Jess to talk a little bit more about some of the impacts of this on us.
Thanks, Tim. So yeah, I'll just quickly run through the impacts and then we can move on to the practical support, which I'm sure it will be very, very useful to you all. So one of the first impacts that we probably saw was obviously the increased price of energy, particularly gas. We might not have initially felt the effects because many of us were on like fixed tariffs, but when these fixed tariffs finished, then a lot of us were exposed to the higher prices. And if we were to look at the average gas bill that's being paid right now, it's more than double what it was 2 years ago. And the wholesale energy prices, as Tim was saying, keep on rising, and the price caps meant that the energy suppliers who were buying all of these wholesale energy units can't fully pass on the cost to the customers, and so it's meant that they've had to absorb a lot of the impact. And what that's meant is that smaller energy companies either ceased trading or went into administration. So we lost companies like Green Energy, Avro, Igloo Energy, and Bulb, who are actually now being managed by the government. And the majority of these energy suppliers were offering low tariffs, so already supporting those that were struggling with their energy bills prior to the energy crisis. And because there's now less competitive tariffs in the market for energy, we're all forced to basically pay higher prices, unfortunately. And so some of us are already struggling with our energy bills, and this number will most likely increase this winter, especially with the price cap due to rise again in October. And then obviously we need to heat our homes more during the winter. So it can mean that you are in fuel poverty. And this is just another term that you might want to include in your searches when you're looking for supports, because it can reveal more sources which use this term. And it just basically, fuel poverty just means that your energy costs are above average. And if you were to pay your energy bills, then the remaining income that you have you'd struggle to live from it. And it can indicate that you might be living in an energy inefficient home. So in other words, living in a cold home, which can actually have a detrimental impact on your health, especially if you can't heat it to a comfortable temperature because of these energy costs. So some of the signs that you might want to look out for, perhaps like in your own home or looking out for your friends, particularly also older members of your family, are health impacts such as like increased anxiety, depression, mental health issues, being more vulnerable to respiratory diseases, perhaps even more accidents at home. So these are just some of the impacts that have resulted from the energy crisis. And if you are struggling to pay your bills or you worry about this winter, there is some support available that we'd like to make you aware of, which myself and Kirsty will now run through. So first up, we have the Energy Company Obligation, or ECO for short. And this is basically a scheme where large energy suppliers, they give out funding to help you with home improvements and increase the energy efficiency of your property. So things like installing insulation, like in the walls, in your loft, which will then help you to reduce your energy bills. So all you need to do is contact a participating large energy supplier, so like E.ON or EDF. You don't need to be their customer in order to apply, but you do need to fit the eligibility criteria, which is in the table on the right of this slide here. So the eligibility criteria depends on your tenure. If you are a homeowner or a private tenant, you'll need to receive means tested benefits, so things like universal credit. Or if you're a social tenant, the property will need to have an energy performance certificate rating of E or below, and you'll also need the landlord's permission. If you want to find out where your energy performance certificate is, you can go online onto the government website to search an EPC, or you can ask your landlord to supply this information to you. And if you don't fit those two criteria, don't worry, there is a bigger range of criteria available through another side of the scheme called flexible eligibility, and this is dependent on your income and high costs or vulnerability to the cold. And this added criteria is only available to those that are homeowners or private tenants. So you can find all of this information on our website, on our energy initiatives page, which is linked here on the slide. So if you want to take advantage, contact a large energy supplier, ask if they're participating in the scheme, and then check your eligibility and apply. And seeing as though we are heading into the summer months and it's getting a lot warmer now, you can really take advantage of this time to get all of these works done and also get prepared for winter. So to also help with your home improvements, also known as retrofit, the council are offering subsidised retrofit plans with our partner EcoFurb. And what this scheme basically is, it's that they'll send a qualified assessor to come round to your home to do a quick survey of the property, and then they'll create a plan of measures that would be suitable for your home. So things like insulation again, and also renewable heating systems. And this all goes into a little booklet which details the financial savings and the carbon savings that you can make from each measure and the estimated cost to install it. So we just want to make it clear that with this scheme, only the survey and the creation of the plan is being funded by the council. So we just really wanted to kickstart the retrofit journey for our residents, and we realised that, you know, the retrofit journey is quite challenging at times, especially knowing where to start. So with this scheme, after the survey and plan have been created, you'll have the option of accessing EcoFurb's range of trusted installers, and it's at this point that if you would like to continue through to the installation, then it will have to be funded by yourselves. So if you do want to register your interest for this scheme, the link is on the slide. We're very close to launching, so when you sign up and we've launched, then we'll send you an email to notify you that the application stage is open. And there is eligibility criteria. So if you're a homeowner, you must live within the borough. And if you're a landlord, your property must be within the borough as well. So yeah, and you must have the intention of retrofitting your whole home, and this will be assessed in the application through 3 very short questions, and you must also not be eligible for any other grant funding, which will all be explained again on the application form. And now I will pass to Kirsty, who will talk about some other support available to do with fuel vouchers and the council tax rebate.
Thank you, Jess. Welcome everybody. My name is Kirsty Brooks-Smith, and I'm going to talk to you today about 2 of the schemes that we currently have at Hammersmith and Fulham. So first of all is our fuel voucher scheme. We are offering up to 3 £30 top-up vouchers in a 6-month period for residents through our household support fund. To be eligible for this support, you do need to live in the borough. You do have to be on a prepayment meter. You have to be very close to being disconnected, or you're living without energy today. If you're not close to being disconnected, you need to be being able to present to us that you will get disconnected within the next 24 to 48 hours. What we're looking at when we're looking at the fuel voucher eligibility is we're really looking at trying to identify those vulnerable residents that they're having to make significant and material sacrifices. So they're basically making the choice between heating and eating. We've been able to deliver this scheme through a partnership with the Fuel Bank Foundation. Access into the scheme, we have a number. Sorry, if you put on the next slide, I'll show you the numbers. We are triaging our residents. So if our residents are contacting us through any of our contact centres, then all of our contact centre operators have been trained to recognise when somebody is in financial difficulty and having to make that choice between eating and heating. So all of these lines that we have in our contact centre will be asking residents about their fuel and whether they're on a prepayment meter. If they are on a prepayment meter, then we will be directing them to one of the teams to help. So for example, if they ring our council tax support line or our housing benefit line and they mention that they're really struggling, we will refer them for a fuel voucher. If they're ringing our temporary accommodation line, those advisors are also being trained to recognise that somebody is in financial difficulty, and they too will do a referral through to the fuel bank for the prepayment meter. And what we're trying to do is have access into this scheme across the authority. So we've also trained our social workers and our colleagues in adults and children to recognise where a family there may be a conversation around fuel and fuel poverty, and we're preferring everybody into this scheme. So we're doing our best to try and make our residents aware, although it's difficult. It's often a difficult conversation to engage with a resident. They're usually ringing us about something else, but what those officers are trained to do is to identify that there's something underneath there, and it may be a fuel poverty has prompted the call to us for another type of support, and where we can, where there is a prepayment meter, we can give them up to 3 fuel vouchers a year. We recognise that obviously not everybody is on a prepayment meter, but what we do know that a lot of our residents on low incomes are on prepayment meters. So it's just recognising and opening up those conversations. So I would suggest if you are talking to clients, that's one of the conversations you could have with them. And if you recognise that they may have a prepayment meter and they are in fuel poverty, is to get in touch with us. We also have we've also been working in partnership with our fuel bank providers as well, so they're having the same conversations with those residents when they're giving the food bank vouchers and the parcels out. So hopefully we're trying to encapsulate everybody we come across to have that initial conversation with them about fuel poverty. Next slide, please, Jess. So moving on then to our council tax energy rebate. You will have seen an awful lot about this in the press over the last few weeks, and in fact today we're expecting a further announcement about the fuel rebate. So what is the council tax fuel or energy rebate? It's a payment of £150 that is there to help residents with the rise in energy costs. It's therefore how we recognise our residents for this is that we are going to pay this £150 out to everybody that is in a band A to D in council tax. If they're in band E and they have a disabled band reduction on their property, they will also be eligible for this £150 payment. There is eligibility criteria, so it has to be the person's main home. Second homes and empty properties are not eligible, and we're also going to pay some properties which are exempt from council tax, so they don't normally pay council tax, but they will also receive this rebate. So they are homes occupied by students, persons under 18, or persons with severe mentally impaired, or annexes where there's a dependent relative living in the property. In addition, what's really good about this scheme is that we will pay this to our residents who are also in receipt of council tax support. So even if our residents aren't paying council tax, but they're getting council tax support, they will receive this £150 payment. Next slide, please, Jess. So we are just on the cusp of paying our first set of payments. So we're about to send out £150 to all of those residents that currently pay their council tax on direct debit. You may ask why the first tranche is those that are on direct debit. It's basically because these are the residents that we have their bank details for. So you can imagine that we don't have bank details for everybody. We only have bank details for those that pay currently by direct debit. So those residents will get their payments first. The second tranche, who are not paying on direct debit, we're very close to launching our portal onto the website. Our residents will be encouraged to go onto our fuel portal, put in their bank details, and we will pick up their bank details from there and be able to pick them up to pay the £150 out to them. The next tranche will be our discretionary application. So we're just forming our discretionary scheme. So we want to help those residents that are also suffering extreme hardship, but are not in the bands A to D, but will be in the bands E to H. We're also looking within that discretionary scheme to look at individual circumstances, to look at each individual on their own merit. We want to include care leavers, foster families, you know, any sort of criteria. We're just pulling that together now, and we'll be taking that forward for approval. But the discretionary scheme is very much going to be down to individual circumstances. We want to be able to make sure that we can reach out to everybody that's experiencing this hardship at the moment. We do expect, and you would have seen on the news this morning, we're expecting some news on this today. So we think this scheme will come again. We think we're going to be told today that we have to either pay it out again late September, or we think the amount may change. So it's, you know, I wish we'd have had the announcement this morning and I would have been able to update you properly. At the moment, it's just speculation. So unless there's been an announcement in the last half an hour and I've missed it, hopefully after this conference today, you'll have some better news and we'll know exactly what the government is going to announce today. We do also have some additional funds available. So you will maybe be aware of the 1.4 million the council has been given in household support fund granting. We have also allocated some of this funding to help residents where they're in council tax arrears. We will work with those residents individually to try and free up the money that they would be paying for their council tax, and so that they can use that money to spend on fuel, and we'll help them by crediting any award from the household support fund to their council tax, therefore freeing up their money to pay for household fuel. We also have given a pot of money to our Hammersmith and Fulham housing rental income team. So when people are presenting with rent arrears, they will also look at that family's individual circumstances to see if they too can make an award from that pot. Again, if they're able to make an award from that pot to help those families, then that income then can be used. They're free. I know nobody's got free income, but the idea is that if we can pay their arrears, then that will free up the income that they were going to pay their arrears with to pay on fuel. And then we're also looking at helping residents struggling financially with the cost of basic living expenses due to changing circumstances. So we will look at, again, on an individual household circumstance, and we'll look to make a cash award if that award will prevent an adverse effect on the family situation, such as disconnecting from utilities or going without food. So there's a number of pots of funds available where it's very much linked individually to those financial circumstances of that family. But as I said, all of our support teams, our welfare teams, have all been briefed and are fully aware of those pots. So if you do have a family in crisis, it is well worth getting in touch with one of those teams. I'm sorry I can't tell you what the announcement's going to be today. If I could, it would have made the climate session today much more exciting for you, that unfortunately it's not come. So thank you for that. As Jessica has also said, we have launched a new page, and I know that Jessica is going to share that new web page with you today. So all of those numbers and all of those schemes are referenced on those pages. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsty. So now I just want to talk about some of the other support schemes that are available later on this year that you might want to keep a note of in your diary. So first of all, there's the Warm Homes discount, which gives you £140 rebate from your energy bill. And this is given to you through your energy supplier. And again, like Kirsty said, this information might actually be outdated by the time that this webinar finishes, because we are expecting the announcement any time now. It might even be as I speak. So what I'd recommend is to check back on the government website for the exact amount that will be offered for the Warm Home discounts. So how it works is that the amount is usually deducted from your electricity bill, but there are some suppliers now that allow you to spread the rebate across into your gas bills as well. So the payment is normally made before the end of March, and it's available for all types of customers. So for example, if you're on a direct debit, they'll deduct it from your energy bill. If you're on a prepayment meter, they'll send through a voucher. You do have to sign up normally to receive this rebate through an application process, and you can find that on your energy supplier's website or through the phone by calling them up. So in terms of eligibility criteria, if you receive the guaranteed elements of pension credit, you should receive a letter reminding you to apply closer to the time. And this is known as like the core group. And then you have another group called the broader group. And this eligibility criteria is dependent on your energy supplier. And it usually, across all of the energy suppliers, they usually cover the same sort of things. So like the types of benefits that you're on, if you have any small children or health issues within the home. So I'd really recommend, just double checking right now whether or not you might be entitled to receive any of the benefits, just so that you are eligible for some of these schemes that we've talked about today. So for the Warm Homes discount, normally applications open around October time. So check back with your energy supplier to see if they're participating. But it's worth noting, if you are a utilita customer, they normally open their applications much earlier. I think last year it was in August. So check back around July and August times to make sure you're not missing out. And they're only open for a short amount of time. I believe with utilita, it's only 2 weeks. With other energy supplies, it's normally for a few months, but if they run out of funding, then they will close the scheme. So as soon as it's open, just apply straight away. And then we also have the cold weather payment. This is normally paid automatically in most cases. So what happens is they'll pay you £25 for each 7-day period of very cold weather between the dates of 1st of November and the 31st of March. And to be eligible for this, you need certain benefits, which are listed there. So like pension credit, income support, income-based job seeker allowance, income-related employment and support allowance, universal credit, or even support for mortgage interest. So if you want to check that you're eligible and that you'll be receiving this, then I'd contact your pension service or your nearest job centre plus. And then for the final one, which is normally paid around the winter time, it's the winter fuel payments. And this is a payment between £100 to £300 off of your energy bills, paid normally around November, December time. So how much you get paid is dependent on your age and whether or not you live with anyone who is in receipt of a certain type of benefit, or if you perhaps live in a care home. So to be eligible, it's dependent on age. For this year, you need to be born on or before the 26th of September 1955, and this date will change every single year. So next year it will be 56. And also to qualify, you need to be living in the UK for at least 1 day during the qualifying week. And this qualifying week is normally at the end of September. But I would check just again on the government website, just in case that changes, so that you don't miss it. There might also be a number of reasons why you might not qualify for this particular payment. So if you've been receiving free hospital treatment for more than a year, or if you need to have permission to enter the UK and your granted leave states that you can't claim public fundings, or perhaps you're in prison for the whole qualifying week, or if you live in a care home for the whole period of time between June and September. And again, this date might change, so just check online. So to claim this winter fuel payment, you might need to claim it. So you just have to, again, like I say, check on the government website, which is linked on this slide here. So this is the webpage that has been developed detailing all of the support that we're aware of. And like Emily said at the beginning, it will be updated with all the information that's been released today in the statement in the House of Commons. So I suggest going on this website and just looking through what kind of support that you're eligible for. And now I'll pass over to Nurey from Green Doctors, who the council are partnered with to give all of our residents free energy efficiency advice.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for everybody to join us today. Can you hear me?
Yes, all good. Thanks, Nuri.
All right. Okay. I'm Nurey, and I'm a Green Doctor from Groundwork London. I'm here to introduce you to our Green Doctor service. And we have very experienced Green Doctor team, and the service has been running more than 16 years. Next slide, please, Emily. And the idea is to help most vulnerable people in London to save energy and keep warm and to take care of well-being. And we work in partnership with London boroughs, housing associations, and other organizations to deliver a free phone consultation, home visit, where we give advice on bills and provide referrals to further services to improve health and well-being of residents. Next slide, please. And aim of our service to improve health, reduce negative impact of cold home. As you know that every winter NHS overwhelmed, and we try to decrease the cold weather impact on NHS. We help residents to live in a warm home, maximize the comfort regarding their energy bills, also give them easy energy savings tips to reduce energy consumption in their house. Next slide, please. At the moment, we are delivering a hybrid model of home visit or telephone consultation. During the energy consultation, our Green Doctor team will help residents to understand their confusing or incorrect bills. We can go through all the details on the bills. We can explain to residents to understand in details as well. And we can give them energy saving advice, and we can encourage them to implement this energy saving advice their daily life. And also we can help them to get some discount on their energy and their own water bill as well. So most of the residents are eligible to get a warm home discount, water help, or water share, but unfortunately they are not aware of those schemes. So we do introduce them to these schemes, and then we can guide them how to apply for this discounts. If they can't do that, we can do on behalf of them. And also we can register them to priority service. This is a free utility support service to help people in vulnerable situations. Next slide, please. The advice is available through the Green Doctors we can help them fill that management. So if the resident has any outstanding balance on their water or energy bills, they can access some of the grants. So we can guide them how to apply for these grants. If they have a difficulty to apply for it, we do on behalf of the residents as well. Also, we can help them to apply to larger grants to improve home and heating efficiency as well, such as boiler replacement or insulation. So if the resident has an old boiler or inefficient boiler, we can help them to get a new boiler. We can help them for the wall installation or loft installation, etc. And also, when they have a Green Doctor service, they will be able to get energy saving items as well, such as LED light bulbs, radiator panels, or draft excluders. And we can signpost residents to other services for additional support with local organizations as well. Next slide, please. And we have eligibility criteria. So if the resident has a low income, if they are receiving means tested benefits, or if they have a long-term health conditions or disability, or resident is over 65, or if they have a child under 5, they will be able to get this service absolutely free. Thanks. Next slide, please. So how our services work: once we receive the referral, the calls and the visits are booked in advance. Our phone consultation takes between 45 to 60 minutes. And our home visit takes around 90 minutes. It can be sometimes 2 hours. It depends on resident needs, basically. As I mentioned, this whole Green Doctor service is free. And after our consultations, a resident will be able to receive energy saving measures, and that could save energy around the home. If they have a home visit, they will be able to get our Green Doctors will be able to install these measures, or if they have a phone consultations, this small will be sent through by post as well. And also our Green Doctors will signpost you to other services that could help you further. Next slide, please. So if you want to reach us, we do have our Green Doctor website. You can put your interest on the website, or you can call us. In general, it takes 1 to 2 weeks to get back to you, but in general, it takes much quicker, I can say. Next slide, please. And this is our website. And next slide, please. And lastly, I just want to talk about the fuel price impact as well. As you know that all the prices increased dramatically. And if you don't want to come across with the fuel that you just need to take some actions. These could be like, you can improve the energy efficiency of your home, or you can check that you are claiming all of the benefits you are entitled to, or if you have any problem to pay your bills, we would suggest you to talk to your energy provider straight away. And we would suggest you to provide your meter reading to your energy supplier regularly to get the accurate bills as well. Next slide, please. Okay, that's all from me. Thanks so much for your time. I'm happy to answer all your questions after the session. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Nurai, for coming along today. So we now have about 10 minutes or so for Q&A. So please do ask any questions that you would like in the chat, and we will do our best to answer those on the call. But again, if we don't have the right people, then we'll follow up afterwards. The first question I was going to ask my colleagues Tim and Jess, which is about energy provider comparison sites. So I wondered, Tim or Jess, if you'd like to comment. There's a question here that says there's many providers who are providing energy comparisons. Is there a particular provider that would recommend, or would you be able to say a few words on, you know, is now the time to switch? Is now the time to be looking at energy price comparisons?
Jess, do you want me to go first?
Yeah, sure.
I think with price comparison sites, I mean, I don't think there's any particular one that's better, and I don't think we would be able to recommend one specifically. I would recommend using a couple rather than one, because sometimes a price comparison site will have a particular pool of suppliers that it uses, so it won't give you access to the whole market. If you use 2 of the big ones, you'll probably cover more. I think in terms of kind of whether it's time to switch or not, I think at the moment, I mean, I think Jess mentioned this, there are really just no good deals out there at the moment, because there's just no kind of pressure on suppliers to find new customers. And indeed, they don't really even particularly want new customers, I think a lot of them at the moment. So I think there's probably very limited mileage in shopping around. It doesn't stop you trying. But I think you will probably find it quite difficult to beat your existing deal unless you are perhaps on something like a prepayment meter, which tends to be more expensive. I don't know, Jess, if you've, or anyone else, if you've got any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think I would say I would agree with what you said, Tim. And if you are going on a comparison site, then don't just look at the whole price that they quote. Make sure to go into the actual tariff and really, you know, sort of investigate what the cost for each unit for electricity or gas is, and also look at the standing prices as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Thanks, Jess and Tim. So the next question here is about smart meters. So this resident's particular experience was installing a smart meter and then finding out that they might not be offered a supply from a provider because of the smart meter. So maybe I'll start with Nurai, if you'd like to just comment on smart meters. What installing smart meters a bad idea? Is that fair to be excluded from a particular supplier because you have a smart meter?
Okay, it's smart meters are really useful for people who has a disabilities or for elderly people. So some strangers not going to come to their house and take the reading. So it is really useful for this kind of people specifically. But for the others as well, some people, they do hesitate to get the smart meters, but they are really useful. So the thing is, you don't need to do a reading. Your supplier will be able to get the reading straight away from your meter, basically. So you're going to get accurate bills. And so you're not going to get then like a chunk of bills when you have a credit meter. And the thing is, first generation smart meters, it is a problem. When you change one supplier to another supplier, unfortunately, they can't use the smart meter. But second generation of smart meters, even though if you change your supplier one to another one, it's as far as I know, it's perfectly work well, and you shouldn't have any problem. Just the people who might have a problem, who has a first generation smart meter when they change their supplier, basically. But in general, they are great stuff. They just make life much more easier.
Thank you, Nuray. So it sounds like that was a first generation smart meter, you know, a bit of teething problems with us all getting acquainted with them, but from now on, that should be less of a problem.
And they're also, I'd just add, they're upgrading first generation smart meters anyway, so they should end up all being upgraded to the newer generation.
That's great. Thank you, Tim. Next question here I've got is for Kirsty, which was just a question about the council tax rebate. Will that happen this month? And also, will it happen in one go, in a single payment or in increments?
So we're hoping it happens early next week. That's our timescales. So yes, the first batch will go out next week. We do have file limits on sending accounts out, but we believe that all the direct debit payers will be paid over the course of 2 days next week. So yes, the initial payment will hopefully, fingers crossed, all things being well, go out next week. We do appreciate that we are one of the later payers. We've had a lot of issues with our software suppliers, but we've found an alternative solution now. So we're confident. I've been testing it all morning, so I'm hoping, yes, it will go out this month.
Thank you for that, Kirsty. Next question is for Jess. So Jess, there's a question about the retrofit plans. Is the scheme social landlords with properties in the borough also eligible for those whole house retrofit plans, or is it only landlords with private sector tenants?
I think at this moment we are aiming at those in the private sector.
Okay,
tenants,
that's great.
so unfortunately not. Sorry.
No worries. Love a short answer. Thank you. I'm just going to jump back to Kirsty, actually, just another question about council tax support. So how will the council tax energy rebate be paid to those on council tax support? So
it depends. If they're on direct debit, it will be paid automatically into their bank accounts because they've got bank accounts. If they're not on direct debit, then they will be invited to put their bank details into our portal, and again, it will be paid by bank into their bank accounts. We do appreciate there may be a small number of residents where that's not suitable, and we are looking at alternative options for those.
That's great. Thank you, Kirsty. Tim, there's a question here about solar, which says, what is the best solar tariff export company?
I wouldn't have an immediate answer to that. And again, it's kind of difficult to recommend individual suppliers. I know that Octopus are well regarded in general for being a kind of good, relatively cheap renewable supplier that have good provision for things like solar, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're the best. There would be, there's something called the Smart Export Guarantee, which means your supplier has to pay you for solar, for electricity you generate that you don't use. So any supplier will have to do that. But I think the rate does vary a bit between supplier. Again, I would think price comparison, I don't personally have solar, but I would think price comparison sites could probably help you to compare the amount you could get from different suppliers.
Thank you, Tim. There's some comments here from a resident who says that it's difficult or it's impossible to read the meter, that it's in a cupboard, that they can't get to it. Nuray, I'm just wondering, is that something that Green Doctors might be able to help with?
Yes, we can help that, but they able to ask their supplier to move their meter as well, because end of the day, they're not going to be able to get the Green Doctor every month to their house, isn't it? So that's the reason it would be perfect, if it's possible, to request to move the meter in a better position, better place. But if they're really desperate for that, we can help them. We can help to do the reading, and we can submit the reading to an energy supplier as well.
Thank you, Nurai. So yeah, again, we'll share all the details afterwards if people would like to refer themselves or others to the Green Doctors Service. I think there is one final question for Kirsty, which I'm not sure specifically which scheme this relates to, but when will the portal be available to upload bank details?
So we will put that live as soon as we've made those first direct debit payments. So it's imminent. We've got the first stage to do, and then we will put it live. We're hoping it'll be live after the bank holiday. That's our hope. We're doing this very quickly now because we appreciate that people are desperate for this money. So we're doing it as quick as we possibly can. The portal is there. We just haven't switched it on live yet.
That's great. Thank you, Kirsty. And I'm aware that people are sharing the very live news about what's the news that's coming up from central government. So again, I might ask my colleague Simone if you can please share the cost of living page from the council website. This is absolutely the one place to go, and it's really comprehensive at the moment, and we'll be continually updating it with the latest information from central government, as well as the different support schemes and grants that are available as well. So please have a look at that webpage. So that's all of the questions in the chat. So we'll just finish and wrap up. So on the next slide, I just wanted to mention that we are launching a new project, which is called Sustainability Champions. Just back one, please, Jess. Thank you. So this is going to be a network of local people who are interested in anything around sustainability, and saving money on energy bills is integral to that. So we're really excited to explore if there's opportunities for people to get more training about how to save money on energy bills, or deliver that advice to neighbours, people within their community, friends and family. So if you would like to find out more about this project, then please contact Michelle at UPG, and we are hosting coffee mornings over the next couple of weeks if you're interested in getting more training and knowledge about this and joining the local project. And yeah, on the final slide, we are doing a lot of work around energy bills and energy in general, all as part of our work around the climate and ecological emergency. So again, we'll share a link for Climate Connects in the chat, but we are having lots of webinars. Today's one is about energy bills. We've recently done ones on solar panels and heat pumps, but we're also planning some in-person workshops with the fantastic Green Doctors next month in 2 places around the borough. So if you'd like to find out about that and come along to those. And again, we know that there's lots of grants and schemes that we've covered today. And if you want to be the first people to find out about those, then again, Climate Connects is a great place to start. I'm just going to respond to a quick question in the chat. Where will the coffee mornings be held for Sustainability Champions? One in the north and one in the centre of the borough. So I think in the north, we're looking at White City Community Centre and around Hammersmith for the second one. But yeah, that's us today. So yeah, that's just the final slide. So thank you everyone very much for coming along, for all of your questions and comments. We'll follow up soon with the slides, with the recording, and with all of the links that we've shared today. But really appreciate you joining us and hope you have a nice afternoon. Thanks everyone.